Tonight we begin a gentle exploration into one of the most liberating practices the Buddha ever shared. Through timeless stories and ancient wisdom, we will walk together through the art of releasing what no longer serves us. These are not rules to follow or goals to achieve. They are gentle teachings that will naturally find their way into your understanding, guiding you toward the freedom that comes from letting go of the past. Before we settle in, feel free to share what time it is where you're listening. If you are replaying old memories that bring pain, know that you are not alone in this. If you find yourself wishing you could change what has already happened, this too is a natural part of being human. The Buddha understood that we all carry yesterday into today. He taught that letting go is not about forgetting or pretending the past did not occur. It is about loosening our grip on what we cannot change so that we can fully meet what is here right now. Tonight, we will explore the gentle practice of releasing the past, the memories that keep us awake at night, the roads not taken that we keep wondering about, the versions of ourselves we used to be that we sometimes miss or resent, not because the past does not matter, but because holding it too tightly keeps us from being fully alive in this present moment. As we move through these teachings and stories, you may notice your breathing naturally slowing, your body naturally releasing tension it has been holding. Understanding brings its own kind of peace. There is nowhere else you need to be right now. Nothing from yesterday that needs to be solved tonight. Just rest here as we explore what it means to gently set down what we have been carrying. The Buddha once told his students about a monk who was traveling through the forest, carrying his few possessions. This monk had been walking for many days, and his shoulders ached from the weight of his bundle. As the sun began to set, he came to a river crossing. The water was moving swiftly, and he knew he would need both hands free to cross safely. So the monk set down his bundle on the riverbank. He waded into the water, feeling the cold current against his legs. He crossed carefully, step by step, until he reached the other side. Once there, he climbed up onto the opposite bank and continued walking into the evening, lighter now without his burden. Several hours later, deep in the night, the monk suddenly sat up in alarm. He had left his bundle on the other side of the river. His spare robe was in there, his begging bowl, the few simple things he owned in the world. How could he have been so careless? He spent the rest of the night consumed with worry and regret. Why had he forgotten? How would he survive without those things? Should he go back in the morning? But the river would be even more dangerous to cross in daylight when he could see how swift it truly was. When dawn came, the monk began walking back toward the river, his mind full of plans and worries. But as he walked, he began to notice something. He felt lighter than he had in months. His shoulders did not ache. His steps came more easily. Without the physical burden, he could walk farther and faster. He could move through the forest with a freedom he had forgotten was possible. When he reached the river crossing, he stood on the bank and looked across at where his bundle still sat, exactly where he had left it. And in that moment, he had a realization. He had been so worried about losing those few simple possessions that he had not noticed the gift of walking without them. The spare robe and bowl were useful, yes, but the freedom of moving unburdened was precious in its own way. The monk sat down on the riverbank and contemplated this teaching. He could cross back over and retrieve his things, or he could continue forward, trusting that he would find what he needed along the way. Either choice was acceptable, but what was not acceptable was spending his entire night suffering over something that had already happened, replaying the moment he set down the bundle, criticizing himself for his forgetfulness. None of that suffering changed the fact that the bundle was on the other side of the river. It only robbed him of his peace in the present moment. After some time in reflection, the monk stood up and continued walking forward. He decided to see what it was like to travel this way for a while, unburdened, trusting, open to what came. He would find another bowl eventually. Someone would offer him a spare robe. These things had come to him before. They would come again. But this moment of walking light and free, this was happening right now. And he chose to be present for it rather than lost in regret about what he had left behind. Take a gentle breath here. Feel how this simple story touches something true. How much time do we spend mentally going back to retrieve things we have set down? How often do we rob ourselves of the present moment by replaying scenes from yesterday, last month, last year? The Buddha's teaching in this story is both simple and profound. The past has already happened. It sits on the other side of a river we have already crossed. We can spend our energy wishing we had done things differently, replaying old scenes, carrying the weight of what was. Or we can notice what it feels like to be here now, in this moment, which is the only moment we actually have. This does not mean the past does not matter. Our memories shape us. Our experiences teach us. But there is a difference between learning from the past and being imprisoned by it, between remembering what happened and endlessly reliving it, between honoring our history and being unable to step forward because we are always looking backward. Let us explore another story that shows this teaching from a different angle. This one reveals how we sometimes cling to past versions of ourselves, unable to accept that we have changed and grown. In a village known for its pottery, there lived a woman named Yuki who had been famous in her youth as a dancer. She had studied since childhood, and by the time she was 20, she could move with such grace that people would travel from distant towns to watch her perform. Her dancing was like water flowing, like wind moving through bamboo, effortless and mesmerizing. Yuki's identity was completely wrapped up in being a dancer. When people asked who she was, she would say, "I am a dancer. Not I dance, but I am a dancer." The distinction was important. Dancing was not something she did. It was who she was at the core of her being. Then, when Yuki was 30 years old, she injured her knee badly during a performance. The healer said she would recover, but she would never dance the way she used to. The complex movements, the leaps and spins that had made her famous, these would be too dangerous for her knee to handle now. Yuki was devastated. If she could not dance, who was she? Her entire sense of self was built on this one skill, this one identity. Without it, she felt like she had disappeared, like she no longer existed in any meaningful way. For years, Yuki lived in the shadow of who she used to be. She would not attend performances because watching others dance brought too much pain. She would not try other forms of movement because they were not real dancing. She kept all her old costumes in a trunk, taking them out sometimes to remember when she was someone who mattered. She would tell anyone who would listen about her dancing days, about the performances she had given, about the acclaim she had received, always talking about the past, about who she used to be, because she could not accept who she was now. One day, a traveling teacher came to the village. This teacher was known for her wisdom about the nature of change and impermanence. Yuki went to hear her speak, drawn by something she could not quite name. Perhaps a hope that this teacher would tell her how to become her old self again. The teacher spoke about many things, but one teaching struck Yuki deeply. The teacher said that we are like rivers, always flowing, always changing. A river does not mourn that it is no longer in the mountains where it began. It does not wish it could be again what it was yesterday. It simply flows forward, adapting to the landscape, becoming what it needs to be in each new place. After the talk, Yuki approached the teacher privately. She told her about her dancing, about her injury, about how she felt she had lost herself when she lost her ability to perform as she once had. The teacher listened with kind attention. When Yuki finished, the teacher asked a simple question. Who is the one who misses dancing? Yuki was confused. I am. I miss it. And who is this I who misses it? The teacher asked. Is it the dancer you used to be? Or is it someone else? Someone who is here now, who is aware of missing that past self? Yuki sat with this question. If she was truly gone, if she had disappeared when her dancing ended, Then who was here feeling this loss? Who was this awareness that could remember dancing and long for it? The teacher smiled gently. You think you are the dancer. But dancing was something you did, not something you were. The awareness that could dance is still here. That awareness can learn to do other things. It can find other expressions. But you keep trying to force it to be only what it was before. And that is causing you great suffering. She placed a hand on Yuki's shoulder. The you that danced those beautiful performances is not gone. That awareness, that consciousness, that essential self is right here. It has simply moved downstream, like a river moving from the mountains to the valley. The mountain river was beautiful. The valley river is also beautiful, but only if it is not spending all its time wishing it were still in the mountains. This teaching did not immediately transform Yuki's pain. She still grieved her dancing. She still missed the performances and the person she had been. But something had shifted in her understanding. She began to ask herself the teacher's question: who is the one experiencing this moment? As weeks passed, Yuki noticed that when she was lost in memories of dancing, she was not actually present in her life. She was missing the sunset because she was remembering a performance from 10 years ago. She was missing a conversation with a friend because she was replaying her injury in her mind. She was letting the present moment pass by unlived because she was clinging to moments that had already passed. Slowly, carefully, Yuki began to experiment with being present. When she walked through the village, instead of being lost in memories, she would notice what was actually here. The feel of the ground under her feet, the sounds of daily life around her, the sensation of her body moving, even if it moved differently than it used to. She began to notice that while her knee could not handle the demands of performance dancing, it could handle other things. She started taking slow walks in the hills, feeling the rhythm of her steps, finding a different kind of movement meditation. She began teaching young children the basic principles of balance and grace, discovering that she could share what she had learned without needing to perform herself. Most importantly, she began to discover who she was beyond dancing. She found she had a gift for listening to others. She enjoyed working with clay, feeling the earth take shape in her hands. She loved watching the sky change colors at dusk. These aspects of herself had always been there, but she had never noticed them because she was so identified with being a dancer. Years later, when people would ask Yuki about her dancing days, she would smile and speak of them fondly. Yes, she would say, I danced once. It was a beautiful part of my life. But there was something different in how she spoke now. She was not clinging to that identity. She was not trying to be that person still. She could remember and honor what was without being trapped in wishing it still existed. One evening, a young dancer who had recently injured herself came to Yuki, seeking comfort and advice. The young woman was in the thick of the grief, certain her life was over now, that she could not dance as she once had. Yuki listened with deep compassion, remembering her own journey through this pain. When the young dancer finished speaking, Yuki said gently, I understand feeling that you have lost yourself. I felt that way too. But what I learned is that you have not lost yourself. You have only lost one way of expressing yourself. The consciousness that could dance is still here, still aware, still capable of finding beauty and meaning. You are not your dancing. You are the awareness that could dance and can now learn to do other things. The young dancer looked doubtful, trapped in her grief. Yuki understood. These words could not remove the pain, but she planted a seed, offered a teaching that might help when the young woman was ready to receive it. I will tell you what helped me. Yuki said, every day I practiced noticing who was here in the present moment. When I was lost in memories of dancing, I would ask myself, who is remembering? Who is here now? And I would find that the answer was always the same awareness that had been there when I was dancing. Nothing essential was lost, only changed, only flowing downstream like a river moving through different landscapes. Take another slow breath and feel into Yuki's journey. How many versions of ourselves do we cling to? How many past identities do we hold so tightly that we cannot be present for who we are becoming? The Buddha taught about impermanence constantly. Everything changes. Nothing remains the same. Our bodies change. Our circumstances change. Our abilities and roles change. Fighting against this truth creates suffering, but accepting it, flowing with it like a river adapting to new terrain, this brings peace. Letting go of the past often means letting go of who we used to be, the younger version of ourselves, the healthier version, the version that had different circumstances or abilities. We think we are honoring that past self by clinging to it, but actually, we are dishonoring our present self by refusing to accept that change has occurred. This does not mean we cannot miss what was. Grief is natural. Loss is real. But we can acknowledge what we have lost without being forever imprisoned by that loss. We can remember who we were while still being available for who we are now. Sometimes what keeps us trapped in the past is not grief, but regret. We replay decisions we made, paths we chose or did not choose, wondering endlessly what might have been if only we had done things differently. Let us explore a story about this particular kind of suffering. In a merchant town where trade routes crossed, there lived a man named Kenji who had once been offered an opportunity that he declined. When he was 25 years old, a wealthy merchant had invited him to join a trading expedition to distant lands. The journey would be long and dangerous, but the potential rewards were great. The merchant believed Kenji had the intelligence and skills to become very successful. But Kenji was cautious by nature. He thought about all the things that could go wrong. The ship could sink. Bandits could attack the caravan. He could fall ill in a foreign land far from home. And he had responsibilities here. His aging parents needed him. His younger siblings looked up to him. How could he abandon them for his own ambitions? So Kenji declined the offer. He stayed in his hometown, took over his father's small shop, and lived a modest, safe life. He married, had children, and became a respected member of the community. By most measures, he had a good life, but he never stopped wondering. What if he had gone on that expedition? What if he had taken the risk? The merchant who had invited him became fabulously wealthy. Others who went on those trading journeys came back with stories of amazing experiences and opportunities. And Kenji would think, that could have been me. This wondering became a constant companion. When things were difficult in his life, when money was tight or his shop struggled, he would think, if only I had gone on that expedition. When he heard stories of adventure in distant lands, he would think, I could have seen those places. I was invited. I chose not to go. The regret colored everything. He could not fully appreciate the life he had built because he was always comparing it to the imaginary life he might have had. His actual children seemed less interesting than the hypothetical adventures he had missed. His real wife seemed less exciting than the exotic places he had not seen. Kenji's wife, a patient woman named Hana, watched this pattern for years. She saw how her husband was never fully present, always partly lost in thoughts of what might have been. His body was here, but his mind was perpetually in that moment 25 years ago when he had to make his choice. One evening, when their children were grown and Kenji was still talking about that long-ago opportunity, Hana finally spoke directly about what she had been observing. Kenji, she said gently, do you know what makes me sad? He looked at her, surprised by the sadness in her voice. What? I have given you 30 years of my life. We have built a home together, raised 3 beautiful children, created a life here, and yet you have never fully been here with us. Part of you has always been on that ship you did not board, traveling to places you did not go, living a life you did not choose. You have been here in body, but absent in spirit, and I have felt that absence every day. Kenji started to protest, but Hana continued, her voice still gentle but firm. I am not angry. I am just sad. Sad that you have missed the beauty of the life you actually lived because you were so focused on the life you did not live. Sad that our real children have had to compete with imaginary adventures for their father's attention. Sad that you have suffered all these years over a choice that cannot be unmade. Her words landed in Kenji's heart like stones in still water. He suddenly saw what she was describing, how he had indeed been absent, how he had let regret steal not just his past, but his present and future as well. That night, Kenji lay awake, seeing his life with new clarity. He had been so consumed with the road not taken that he had barely noticed the road he was actually walking. He had missed countless moments with his children because he was mentally somewhere else. He had not fully appreciated Hana's love and partnership because he was always wishing for adventures he had not had. And the cruelest irony was that even if he had made the other choice, he might well have spent those 30 years regretting what he had left behind, wondering about the family he did not have, missing the stability he had given up. The grass always seems greener in the imaginary life we did not live. The next morning, Kenji went to visit an old friend who was a meditation teacher. He told him everything, about the choice he had made 30 years ago, about the regret that had consumed him, about Hana's words and his realization. The teacher listened carefully. When Kenji finished, the teacher was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Tell me, can you go back and make a different choice?" Kenji shook his head. "No, of course not. Can you know with certainty what would have happened if you had chosen differently?" "No," Kenji admitted. "I imagine it would have been wonderful, but I do not actually know. The ship could have sunk. I could have died of illness abroad. I might have been miserable. So you have spent 30 years suffering over a choice that cannot be changed and an alternative future that you cannot know would have been better?" When the teacher said it so plainly, Kenji felt the absurdity of it. He had tortured himself for 3 decades over something that existed only in his imagination. The teacher smiled with compassion. This is what the Buddha taught about. We create our own suffering by clinging to what is not. You've been clinging to a life you did not live, a choice you did not make, a past you cannot change, and in doing so, you have abandoned the only moment that is actually real. This one, right now. He leaned forward. Here is a practice I want you to try. Every time you notice yourself thinking about that choice, I want you to gently ask yourself this question. What is actually here right now? Not what might have been, not what you wish was, but what actually is. Practice bringing yourself back to reality, back to the present, again and again. Over the following months, Kenji practiced this simple exercise. When he found himself drifting into regret about the past, he would pause and ask, what is actually here? And he would notice, here is my shop still standing. Here is Hana still by my side, despite my years of absence. Here are my children, grown now, but still part of my life. Here is this morning sunlight. Here is the taste of tea. Here is this moment, this breath. At first it was difficult. The habit of regret was deeply worn. His mind wanted to return to those familiar grooves of what if and if only. But each time, he would gently redirect himself. What is actually here? Gradually, something began to shift. He started to see the beauty and value in the life he had actually lived, not as a consolation prize for the life he did not have, but as a real, valid, meaningful life in its own right. He began to notice Hana with fresh eyes, seeing her patience, her strength, her constant presence. He began to appreciate his children for who they actually were, not as substitutes for experiences he had missed. He started to feel gratitude for the very things he had taken for granted: the stability he had provided his family, the community he was part of, the simple pleasures of daily life that he had been blind to while chasing imaginary alternatives. One evening, several years after his conversation with the teacher, Kenji and Hana were sitting together watching the sunset. Without planning it, Kenji took her hand and said, "I am sorry." Hana looked at him, questioning. "I am sorry I was not fully here for so many years. I am sorry I let regret steal my presence from you and our children. I am sorry I could not see how precious this life, our actual life, has been." Hana squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. "You are here now. That is what matters." And Kenji realized she was right. He could not change the past. He could not give back the years he had spent half absent. But he could be fully here now. He could appreciate what was actually present instead of mourning what was not. He could let go of the road not taken and truly walk the road he was on. Years later, when young people would come to Kenji for advice about decisions they were facing, he would tell them about his experience. "Make your choice as wisely as you can," he would say. "But once you have chosen, truly choose. Do not spend your life wondering about the other paths. Whatever road you take will have its joys and sorrows. You will never know if the other choice would have been better. So give yourself fully to the path you actually walk. That is the only way to find peace. Let your breath settle here. Feel how Kenji's story reflects a suffering many of us know. The endless wondering about what might have been if only we had chosen differently. The Buddha taught that we cannot live two lives. We cannot walk two paths simultaneously. Every choice we make closes some doors while opening others. This is not tragedy. This is simply the nature of being human, of living in time, of having to choose. What creates suffering is not the choices themselves, but our inability to accept that we have chosen. We want to keep all possibilities open forever. We want to somehow live every version of our lives simultaneously. But this is not possible. And attempting it through endless regret means we end up not fully living any version of our life, including the real one we are actually in. Letting go of the past sometimes means letting go of the roads we did not take, the careers we did not pursue, the relationships we did not enter, the versions of our lives that exist only in imagination. We can acknowledge that other possibilities existed, but we cannot live them. We can only live this one actual life, this one actual moment. This does not mean our choices do not matter. They do matter greatly. But once a choice is made and time has passed, the only question that serves us is, given that this is where I am, what do I do now? Not, what if I had chosen differently? That question has no answer and no value. It only steals the present moment and gives nothing in return. Take another gentle breath. Notice if there are roads not taken in your own life that you keep mentally traveling. Choices you keep second-guessing. Versions of yourself that you keep comparing to who you actually are. What would it be like to gently release those phantom alternatives and bring your full attention to the life you are actually living? Sometimes we cling to the past, not because of regret about our choices, but because of attachment to happier times. We remember when life was easier, when we were healthier, when certain people were still alive, when circumstances were more favorable, and we long for those times so intensely that we cannot be present for what is here now. Let us explore a story about this particular kind of holding on. In a mountain village surrounded by cherry trees, there lived an elderly woman named Sumiko, whose life had been marked by great beauty and great loss. In her youth, she had been married to a kind man named Daichi, and together they had built a life full of simple joys. They had a small farm where they grew vegetables and kept a few animals. Their home was modest, but filled with warmth and laughter. Every spring, when the cherry blossoms bloomed, Daichi would take Sumiko's hand, and they would walk through the orchards together marveling at the beauty. Those walks became sacred to them, a yearly ritual that marked the turning of seasons and the constancy of their love. They had been married for 30 years when Daichi became ill. The sickness came quickly and took him within a few months. Sumiko was left alone in their home, surrounded by memories of the life they had shared. For the first year after his death, Sumiko's grief was raw and consuming. She could barely function. Friends and neighbors brought her food and helped with her farm because she had no energy for anything beyond her sorrow. This was natural. The Buddha taught that grief is the price we pay for love, and Sumiko had loved deeply. But as years passed, something shifted in Sumiko's grief. It hardened into something else. She began to arrange her entire life around preserving the past exactly as it had been. She kept Daichi's clothes hanging in the closet. She set a place for him at the table every meal. She would have long conversations with him as if he were still there, telling him about her day, asking his opinion on decisions. Most significantly, every spring when the cherry blossoms bloomed, Sumiko would walk through the orchards alone, talking to Daichi's memory, trying to recreate those precious walks they had taken together. But instead of bringing her peace, these walks left her more desolate, because no matter how hard she tried, she could not bring back what was gone. The walks were hollow imitations of what they had once been. Sumiko began to resent the present moment for not being the past. She would look at the cherry blossoms, and instead of seeing their beauty, she would think, "This is not as beautiful as it was when Daichi was here." She would sit in her garden, and instead of enjoying the sunshine, she would think, "This would be better if Daichi were here beside me." Every present moment was measured against the past and found lacking. She stopped forming new friendships because no one could replace Daichi. She stopped enjoying activities she had once loved because she had done them with him and they felt wrong without him. She stopped really living at all. She existed in a kind of half-life, trapped in a shrine she had built to the past, unable to step forward into whatever future might be available to her. 10 years passed this way. Sumiko aged but did not grow. She survived but did not live. She breathed but felt half dead. One spring, a young woman named Akari came to the village. She was a wandering student of Buddhism, traveling from teacher to teacher, seeking understanding. She had heard there was a small temple in this mountain village and came to stay there for a season. Akari was young and full of life. She had not yet experienced deep loss, so she approached the world with openness and curiosity. When she saw the cherry blossoms blooming, she was enchanted. She would walk through the orchards every day, sitting beneath the trees, writing poetry, simply being present with their beauty. One afternoon, Akari encountered Sumiko in the orchard. The old woman was walking slowly, talking quietly to someone Akari could not see, tears running down her weathered face. Akari approached respectfully and asked if Sumiko was all right. Sumiko looked at the young woman with eyes that held decades of sorrow. "I am walking with my husband," she said. "This was our favorite time of year. We would walk here together every spring for 30 years. Akari looked around, confused. "I do not see anyone with you." "He is dead," Sumiko said flatly. "He has been dead for 10 years. But I still walk with him. I will always walk with him." Akari, with the directness of youth, said something that cut through Sumiko's carefully maintained shrine. "But you are not walking with him. You are walking alone, talking to a memory. He is not experiencing these blossoms. You are not experiencing them either because you are lost in the past. The trees are blooming, but you are not really seeing them." Sumiko felt anger flash through her. How dare this young woman, who knew nothing of loss, speak to her this way? "You do not understand. You have not lost someone you love." "You are right," Akari said gently. "I have not experienced what you have experienced, but I can see what is happening in this moment. These trees are blooming right now. This is their time of beauty, happening right here, and you are missing it because you are trying to be in a moment from 10 years ago that no longer exists. She gestured at the blossoms around them. Your husband is not here to see these blossoms, but you are. And by refusing to see them without him, you are wasting the gift of being alive to witness this beauty. You are not honoring his memory. You are dishonoring your own life. Sumiko wanted to argue, but something in the young woman's words pierced through her defenses. She looked around at the orchard, as if seeing it for the first time in years. The blossoms were indeed beautiful. The same trees that had bloomed when Daichi was alive were blooming still. But she had not truly seen them in a decade. She had been too busy trying to recreate the past to notice the present. That night, Sumiko could not sleep. Akari's words echoed in her mind. You are not walking with him. You are walking alone, talking to a memory. It was harsh but true. Daichi was gone. Her elaborate rituals and conversations did not bring him back. They only kept her trapped in a past that no longer existed. For the first time in 10 years, Sumiko asked herself a painful question. What would Daichi want for her? Would he want her to spend the rest of her life frozen in grief, unable to experience joy, trapped in memories of him? Or would he want her to continue living, to find new sources of meaning and beauty, to honor their love by remaining open to life? She knew the answer. Daichi had loved life. He had been a man who found joy in simple things, the taste of good food, the sound of rain on the roof, the changing seasons. He would be heartbroken to know that his death had caused her to stop living. The next morning, Sumiko went to the orchard again, but this time she did something different. Instead of immediately beginning her ritual conversation with Daichi's memory, she simply stopped and looked at the blossoms, really looked at them. She noticed the exact shade of pink, the way the petals moved in the breeze, the sweet scent that filled the air. She let herself be present with what was actually here, not what used to be here. Tears came, but they were different tears, not the hollow tears of trying to resurrect the dead past, but tears of genuine presence with beauty, tears of acknowledging that this beauty existed, and she was here to witness it, even though Daichi was not. She spoke quietly to his memory, but differently now. Daichi, these blossoms are so beautiful. I wish you were here to see them with me, but since you are not, I will see them for both of us. I will not miss this beauty by trying to be with you in the past. I will be here, fully, in this present moment. That is how I can honor what we had. By continuing to live fully, not by stopping my life when yours ended. This shift did not happen all at once. Sumiko's habit of living in the past was deeply ingrained, but she began to practice what Akari had shown her. Each day she would notice when she was trying to be in the past and gently bring herself back to the present. What is actually here right now? She began to take down some of Daichi's things from where she had kept them as shrines. She boxed up his clothes and gave them to people who could use them. She stopped setting a place for him at meals. These acts felt like betrayals at first, like she was erasing him. But gradually she understood that she was not erasing him. She was simply acknowledging reality. He was gone. Pretending otherwise did not serve anyone. She started to form new friendships, tentatively at first. She began to enjoy activities again, discovering that it was possible to find pleasure in things even without Daichi. The pleasure was different, colored by the knowledge of loss. But it was real. She was not replacing him. She was simply continuing to live. One evening, about a year after her encounter with Akari, Sumiko was sitting in her garden, watching the sunset. For the first time in many years, she was not thinking about the past. She was simply here, watching colors spread across the sky, feeling the cooling air on her skin, present with this moment exactly as it was. And in that presence, she felt something she had not felt in a decade. peace. Not the peace of having Daichi back, not the peace of living in denial, but the peace of accepting what is, of being fully alive to this moment without needing it to be something else. She realized that by holding so tightly to the past, she had been refusing the gift that remained. The gift of being alive, of having more moments, more sunsets, more springs. These moments were not less valuable because Daichi was not here to share them. They were simply different. And by rejecting them, she had been wasting the life that remained to her. When the next spring came and the cherry blossoms bloomed, Sumiko walked through the orchard again. She still thought of Daichi. She still missed him, but she was able to see the blossoms themselves in their own right without the constant painful comparison to how it used to be. She could appreciate their beauty without it being diminished by his absence. She encountered Akari again in the orchard. The young woman had returned to the village for another season. When Akari saw Sumiko, she could immediately see that something had changed. The old woman's face, while still marked by loss, held something new, a kind of openness, a presence. "Thank you," Sumiko said simply, "for telling me what I needed to hear, for helping me see that I was not honoring my husband's memory by refusing to live. I was only creating more suffering." Akari smiled. "What changed?" "I stopped trying to bring back the past," Sumiko said. "I stopped measuring every present moment against how things used to be. I started letting myself be here, fully, in whatever moment I am actually in. It does not mean I do not miss him. I do every day. But I miss him while also being present for my life. The two things can exist together." She looked around at the blossoms. "These are beautiful," she said. "Not as beautiful as they were. Not less beautiful. Just beautiful right now in this moment. And I am here to see them. That is enough." Years later, when Sumiko was very old, young people from the village would come to her for wisdom about dealing with loss and grief. She would tell them about the years she spent trapped in the past and about the moment when she learned to let go. "The past is like cherry blossoms from last spring," she would say. "They were beautiful. They mattered. But they are gone now. This spring has its own blossoms, and they deserve to be seen and appreciated for what they are. If we spend all our time mourning last spring's blossoms, we miss the ones blooming right in front of us." She would tell them that letting go of the past does not mean forgetting. It does not mean the past did not matter. It means accepting that the past has passed, that it lives now only in memory, that we honor it best not by trying to resurrect it, but by continuing to live fully in whatever moment we are actually in. Take a deep breath here and feel the truth of Sumiko's journey. How many of us are like her, so attached to how things used to be that we cannot see how things actually are? How many present moments do we miss because we are trying to live in moments that have already passed? The Buddha taught about attachment constantly. He taught that clinging to what is impermanent causes suffering. And everything is impermanent. People die. Circumstances change. Health fails. Seasons pass. Fighting against this truth, trying to freeze the past in place, trying to live in moments that no longer exist. This creates tremendous suffering. But accepting impermanence, allowing what has passed to be past, being present with what is actually here now, this is the path to peace. Not the peace of having everything we want, but the peace of accepting reality as it is. This does not mean we do not grieve our losses. Grief is natural and necessary. The Buddha never taught that we should not feel pain when we lose someone we love. But there is a difference between grief that processes loss and attachment that refuses to accept loss, between sadness that honors what was and clinging that tries to keep the past alive. Sumiko's 10 years of frozen grief served no one. It did not bring Daichi back. It did not honor his memory. It only caused her to waste a decade of life that she could have been living. When she finally let go, when she finally accepted that he was truly gone and allowed herself to be present with her actual life, that was when she could truly honor both their love and her own remaining time. Notice if you are holding on to past times in your own life, healthier years, easier circumstances, beloved people who are no longer here, versions of your life that no longer exist. What would it be like to acknowledge those times with gratitude and love, and then gently release them? To allow the present moment to be what it is without constantly comparing it to how things used to be? Sometimes what keeps us trapped in the past is not loss or regret, but resentment about how we were treated. We replay old injuries, old betrayals, old moments when we were wronged. We hold on to these memories as evidence, as justification for our anger, as proof that we were right to feel hurt. But in holding on to them, we remain perpetually in the moment of injury, never moving forward. Let us explore a story about this kind of imprisonment. In a fishing village by the sea, there lived two brothers named Taro and Jiro, who had once been close. They had grown up together, worked together, shared everything as brothers do. But when their father died and left them the family fishing boat, a conflict arose about how to divide the inheritance. The dispute was complicated, full of old resentments and miscommunications. In the end, Taro received the boat, and Jiro received other assets that were supposed to be of equal value. But Jiro felt cheated. He believed Taro had manipulated their ailing father in his final days. He believed the division was unfair, and that Taro had stolen what should have been partly his. Whether Jiro's perception was accurate or not became almost irrelevant. What mattered was that he held on to this grievance with fierce intensity. He replayed the events surrounding their father's death over and over in his mind. He mentally rehearsed all the arguments he had made that Taro had dismissed. He imagined different versions of how things should have happened. Jiro's resentment consumed him. When he saw Taro's boat in the harbor, his chest would tighten with anger. When he heard that Taro had a good catch, he would feel bitter envy mixed with satisfaction that it should have been partly his success. When people spoke well of Taro, Jiro would find ways to remind them of the inheritance dispute, to plant doubts about Taro's character. 20 years passed this way. 20 years of Jiro carrying this resentment like a stone in his chest. 20 years of letting this old wound dictate how he felt, what he thought about, how he moved through the world. Taro, meanwhile, had largely moved on. The dispute had hurt him too. He missed his brother. He wished things had been different. But he had a boat to sail, a family to feed, a life to live. He could not spend every day dwelling on their conflict. So while he felt sadness about the broken relationship, he did not carry the consuming resentment that imprisoned Jiro. One day, a terrible storm struck the village. Several boats were damaged or destroyed. Taro's boat, the very boat that had been the source of the brothers' conflict, was smashed against the rocks and sank. Taro and his crew survived, but the boat was a complete loss. When Jiro heard this news, he felt a complicated rush of emotions. Part of him felt a dark satisfaction. The boat that had been stolen from him was gone. But another part of him, a part he had buried under decades of resentment, felt concern for his brother. They had been close once. Taro could have died in that storm. Jiro found himself thinking about the sunk boat in a new way. For 20 years, he had resented that boat as a symbol of being wronged, but now it was gone, destroyed by forces that had nothing to do with their dispute. And he realized something strange. He still felt exactly the same. The boat being gone did not ease his resentment. He was still carrying all the same feelings, even though the object of those feelings no longer existed. This realization disturbed him. He had spent 20 years waiting for some kind of justice, some resolution that would allow him to let go of his anger. But now the boat was gone, and he was still angry, still replaying the past, still trapped in resentment. A few days after the storm, Jiro encountered Taro on the beach. His brother looked older now, worn by decades of hard work and by the recent loss. Taro nodded to him, a cautious acknowledgement. They had not spoken directly in years. Something in Jiro softened. He saw his brother not as the villain of his internal story, but as another aging fisherman who had just lost his livelihood. Just another human being who had suffered and survived. "I heard about your boat," Jiro said quietly. "I am sorry." Taro looked surprised. "Thank you. It is a hard loss." They stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then Jiro heard himself say something he had not planned. "I have been angry about that boat for 20 years. "I know," Taro said simply. "But now it is gone, and I am still angry." Jiro continued, "The boat is at the bottom of the sea, and I am still carrying this resentment as if the boat still exists, as if our father's death just happened yesterday. I have wasted 20 years being angry about something I cannot change." Taro was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I wish things had been different between us. I wish our father's death had not divided us. But it did, and I could not change that. I had to keep living. I could not spend my life drowning in regret." Jiro felt something crack open in his chest. He suddenly saw how he had indeed been drowning all these years, drowning in a past moment that he kept reliving. His brother had suffered the same loss, the same conflict, but had found a way to keep swimming forward, while Jiro had let himself sink, weighted down by resentment. "I do not know how to let it go," Jiro admitted, and there was desperation in his voice. "I have held on to this anger for so long. It feels like part of who I am." Taro looked out at the sea, at the waves that endlessly arrived and departed. "Do you see those waves? Every one of them comes and then goes. They do not try to remain. They do not cling to the shore. They touch the sand and then release, flowing back into the ocean." He turned to Jiro. "Maybe letting go is like that. Not a single dramatic moment, but a gradual releasing. Each time the resentment comes, you notice it and let it flow back out, like a wave returning to the sea, again and again, until eventually it comes less often and with less force." Jiro looked at his brother with new eyes. "When did you become wise?" Taro smiled sadly. "When I got tired of suffering. When I realized that holding on to pain does not change the past. It only poisons the present." Over the following months, Jiro practiced what Taro had described. Each time the old resentment arose, each time he started to replay the events around their father's death, he would notice it and try to let it go. Like a wave, he would think, "Come and go. Do not hold on." It was not easy. The pattern of resentment was deeply worn. His mind wanted to return to those familiar grooves of anger and grievance. But each time, he would practice releasing, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But gradually, the grip of the past began to loosen. One day, Jiro realized that he had gone an entire week without thinking about the inheritance dispute. An entire week of being present with his actual life instead of trapped in events from 20 years ago. The resentment had not disappeared completely, but it no longer consumed him. It was like a distant ache rather than a fresh wound. He sought out Taro and found him mending nets on the beach. Taro had borrowed money to buy a smaller boat and was slowly rebuilding his livelihood. "I want to help," Jiro said, "if you will let me." Taro looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because we are brothers," Jiro said simply. "Because 20 years of anger has not served either of us. Because I am tired of living in the past. Because life is short, and I have already wasted too much of it on resentment." Taro stood and embraced his brother. Both men had tears in their eyes. The 20 years of division did not disappear in that embrace. The hurt and misunderstanding still existed in their history, but they were finally allowing that history to be past. They were finally choosing the present moment over the endless replay of old wounds. As they worked together on the nets, Jiro marveled at how different he felt, lighter somehow, as if he had been carrying a heavy burden for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. The past had not changed. The events still happened as they happened. But his relationship to those events had transformed. He was no longer imprisoned by them. Years later, when the brothers were old men who had rebuilt their relationship and fished together from Taro's new boat, someone asked Jiro how he had finally let go of the resentment that had consumed so many years of his life. Jiro thought carefully before answering. "I had to see that holding on to the past was a choice I was making," he said. "I thought I was being loyal to my hurt, standing up for myself by maintaining my anger. But actually, I was just punishing myself." Taro had moved on. Our father was long dead. The boat was at the bottom of the sea. The only person still suffering from my resentment was me. He looked out at the water, at the endless rhythm of waves coming and going. The past happened. I cannot change it, but I can choose whether to live there or to live here in the present moment. For 20 years, I chose to live in the past. Then I finally chose differently. That is all letting go is. Choosing the present over the past. Choosing freedom over imprisonment. Choosing to finally stop drowning and start swimming again. Let your breath slow and settle. Feel how Jiro's story touches something universal. How many of us are carrying resentments from years ago? How many grudges do we maintain? How many old wounds do we keep fresh by constantly replaying them? The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Jiro burned himself for 20 years. The boat sank, but he was still burning. His brother had moved on, but he was still burning. The past was long gone, but he was still trapped in it, still burning. Letting go of the past often requires us to release our claim to being right. Jiro believed he had been wronged. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the inheritance was unfair. But being right did not free him. Being right did not ease his suffering. Being right just gave him a reason to keep holding the hot coal. There is a teaching the Buddha shared about two monks who were traveling together and came to a river where a young woman was struggling to cross. The older monk picked her up and carried her across, then set her down and continued walking. The younger monk was troubled by this because their order had strict rules about not touching women. He walked in silence for hours, his mind churning with judgment and indignation. Finally, he could not contain himself any longer and said to the older monk, "How could you carry that woman? You know our rules." The older monk looked at him calmly and said, "I set her down on the other side of the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is what we do with the past. Something happens and then we carry it with us for hours, days, years, decades. We keep picking it up and carrying it even though the original event is long finished. The woman has been set down. The boat has sunk. The father has been dead for 20 years. But we are still carrying the moment as if it is happening right now. Take another gentle breath and notice what you might be carrying from the past. Old arguments, old betrayals, old moments of humiliation or hurt. They happened once, but you have carried them through countless present moments, letting them color everything, letting them steal your peace again and again. The Buddha's teaching is simple but profound. You can set them down, not because what happened was okay, not because you were not hurt, but because carrying them is hurting you more than the original event did, because the past is past, and you deserve to live in the present. Sometimes we resist letting go of the past because we believe that our memories, especially our painful memories, are serving an important purpose. We think they protect us from being hurt again. We think they keep us vigilant. We think that if we let go of the past, we are somehow betraying ourselves or others who were involved. Let us explore a story about this kind of protective clinging. In a small town known for its papermaking, there lived a woman named Natsumi who had experienced a terrible betrayal in her youth. When she was 19, her closest friend, a woman she had known since childhood, had spread vicious lies about her throughout their community. The lies damaged Natsumi's reputation and cost her an important opportunity. The friendship ended in bitterness and pain. Natsumi never forgot this betrayal. She told the story often, reminding herself and others of what had happened. She held on to every detail. What her friend had said, how people had looked at her differently, the opportunities that had closed because of those lies. She reviewed these memories regularly, keeping them fresh and vivid. When people would ask why she held on to this painful memory so tightly, Natsumi had a ready answer. I remember so I will not be fooled again. I remember so I will not trust the wrong people. This memory protects me. If I let it go, I might become naive again. I might let someone hurt me the same way. This seemed reasonable to Natsumi. The memory was serving a purpose. It was teaching her to be cautious, to guard her trust, to protect herself. She believed that holding on to the past was wisdom, not imprisonment. But over the years, the effects of this holding on became more clear. Natsumi had difficulty forming new friendships because she was always watching for signs of betrayal. When people showed her kindness, she questioned their motives. When friends shared confidences, she wondered if they were also sharing her confidences with others. She could not be present and open in relationships because she was always partly back in that original betrayal, always seeing the present through the lens of the past. She was 45 years old and realized she had not had a close friend in over 20 years. She had acquaintances, people she was pleasant with, but no real intimacy. The wall she had built to protect herself from another betrayal had also locked her in loneliness. One day, a new family moved to the town. Among them was a woman named Chiyo, who was warm and open-hearted. Chiyo seemed to genuinely like Natsumi and would seek her out for conversation. She invited Natsumi to her home. She asked about Natsumi's life with real interest. Natsumi's first instinct was suspicion. What did this woman want from her? Why was she being so friendly? There must be some ulterior motive. But as weeks passed and Chiyo's kindness remained consistent, Natsumi began to feel something she had not felt in years. The longing for real friendship. The desire to open her heart to someone. But each time she considered letting Chiyo closer, the old memory would arise. The betrayal, the lies, the pain. And she would pull back, maintaining her protective distance. Better to be lonely than betrayed again. One afternoon, Chiyo invited Natsumi for tea and said gently, I feel like you are holding me at arm's length. Every time we begin to grow closer, you withdraw. Have I done something to offend you? Natsumi felt caught. She wanted to dismiss the observation, but Chiyo's eyes were so kind, so genuinely concerned, that she found herself telling the story. The friend who betrayed her. How she had trusted completely and been destroyed by that trust. How she had learned to be more careful. Chiyo listened with deep attention. When Natsumi finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, That sounds terribly painful. I understand why you would want to protect yourself from experiencing that again. Yes, Natsumi said, relieved to be understood. That is exactly right. But Chiyo continued, I have to ask you something, and please know I ask with care. Has protecting yourself from another betrayal also protected you from joy, from connection, from love? How much of your life have you missed because you were guarding against a hurt that might never come? Natsumi felt defensive. I am being wise. I am being careful. Perhaps, Chiyo said gently. Or perhaps you are letting one person from decades ago continue to hurt you. She hurt you once when she spread those lies. But by holding on to that hurt, by letting it dictate how you relate to everyone you meet, you are allowing her to hurt you every single day. She is long gone from your life, but you have given her permanent residence in your heart and let her poison every new relationship. The words landed hard. Natsumi wanted to argue, but she could not. She saw the truth of it. Her former friend had hurt her once, but she had been hurting herself continuously for 26 years by using that one betrayal as a reason to never fully trust again. Is it not possible, Chiyo asked, to remember what happened and learn from it without letting it control your entire life? Cannot wisdom and openness coexist? Cannot you be discerning about who to trust while still allowing yourself the possibility of trusting? Natsumi thought about this for a long time. She had always believed it was either complete vigilance or naive vulnerability. Either hold on to the past as protection or forget it entirely and risk being hurt again. But Chiyo was suggesting a third way. Remember the past without being imprisoned by it. Learn from it without letting it dictate the present. Over the following months, Natsumi practiced this middle way. When the old memory arose and tried to make her suspicious of Chiyo's kindness, she would acknowledge it. Yes, I was betrayed once. That happened, but that was then, and this is now. Chiyo is not the friend who hurt me. This is a different person, a different moment, a different possibility. It felt frightening to lower her walls even a little. Vulnerability felt dangerous after so many years of self-protection. But slowly, carefully, she allowed herself to let Chiyo closer, to share more of herself, to trust in small ways and then slightly larger ways. And something remarkable happened. The friendship that developed was genuine and nourishing. Chiyo proved trustworthy again and again. Not perfect, because no human is perfect, but reliable and kind and true. Natsumi experienced something she had not felt in decades. The warmth of real friendship, the joy of being known and accepted, the comfort of mutual trust. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Natsumi said to Chiyo, "Thank you for being patient with me, for not giving up when I kept pushing you away." Chiyo smiled. "What changed? What allowed you to finally let me in?" Natsumi thought about it. "I realized that I was using the past as a prison. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was actually punishing myself. One person hurt me decades ago, and I was letting that one experience prevent me from ever connecting deeply with anyone again. The cost of that protection was too high." She looked at her friend. "I had to see that remembering the betrayal and learning from it does not require me to live in constant fear of it happening again. I can be aware that betrayal is possible without assuming everyone will betray me. I can be discerning without being closed. I can remember the past without being controlled by it." Years later, Natsumi would reflect that the day she decided to trust Chiyo was the day she finally let go of the past. Not the memory of it, which she still carried, but the grip it had on her present and future. She had taken back her life from a moment that happened 26 years ago. When younger people would come to her struggling with trust issues after being hurt, she would tell them her story. "It is natural to be wary after being betrayed," she would say. "But there is a difference between wisdom and self-imprisonment. Wisdom says, I will be thoughtful about who I trust. I will pay attention to people's actions over time. I will not give my heart carelessly." But self-imprisonment says, "I will never trust deeply again. I will keep everyone at a distance. I will let one bad experience dictate all future experiences." She would encourage them to find the middle way, to honor what they learned from their pain without letting that pain close them off from all future connection, to remember the past without living in it, to be appropriately cautious without being paralyzed by fear. The Buddha taught about this balance. He taught that we should learn from our experiences, but not be enslaved by them. That wisdom comes from understanding patterns without assuming every situation will follow the same pattern. That the present moment is always genuinely new, even though it may contain echoes of the past. Take a moment to breathe and notice if you are using the past as protection in your own life. Are there ways you have closed yourself off because of old hurts? Are there relationships or opportunities you are avoiding because something similar once went wrong? Are you letting painful memories from the past dictate what is possible in the present? The Buddha's wisdom suggests that you can learn from the past without being imprisoned by it. You can remember what happened without assuming it will happen again. You can be appropriately careful without being completely closed. The past does not have to be a wall that keeps everything out. It can be a teacher that helps you navigate forward with greater awareness. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go of the past is accepting that we cannot go back and fix it. We cannot have the conversation we wish we had. We cannot make different choices. We cannot apologize to someone who has died or repair a relationship that is no longer available. This inability to resolve the past can keep us trapped in it, endlessly wishing for something that is impossible. Let us explore one final story about this particular challenge. In a village at the foot of a mountain, there lived a man named Hiroshi, whose father had died suddenly when Hiroshi was 25 years old. They had argued the week before his father's death. Not a serious argument, just one of the many small conflicts that happen between fathers and sons who are both stubborn and proud. But it had ended with harsh words, and they had not reconciled before. His father collapsed one morning and died before the day ended. For 15 years, Hiroshi carried the weight of that unresolved conflict. He replayed the argument endlessly in his mind. He thought of all the things he should have said differently. He imagined the conversation where he apologized and his father forgave him. He tortured himself with the fact that he could never actually have that conversation. His father was gone. The opportunity for reconciliation had passed. The words he wished he had spoken would remain forever unspoken. This inability to fix the past consumed Hiroshi. He became obsessed with other people reconciling with their parents before it was too late. He would urge friends and neighbors to resolve conflicts quickly, to not let disagreements linger, to say the important things while there was still time. His urgency came from his own pain, his own desperate wish that he had done these things. But nothing eased his suffering. No matter how many other people he helped to reconcile, his own past remained unchanged. His father was still dead. The argument was still the last significant interaction they had. The words remained unspoken. Hiroshi's wife, a patient woman named Ayame, watched him suffer for all these years. She had gently suggested that he find a way to make peace with what could not be changed, but he had always resisted. How could he make peace with failing his father? How could he accept leaving things unresolved? One autumn day, when leaves were falling and the air held the melancholy of endings, Ayame took Hiroshi to visit a very old monk who lived in a small hermitage in the mountains. This monk, whose name was Kozin, was known for his wisdom about grief and loss. They sat together in the monk's simple dwelling, drinking tea. Hiroshi told his story, the argument, his father's sudden death, the 15 years of carrying this unresolved pain, the inability to let it go because he could never fix it. Kozin listened with the deep attention of someone who had heard much suffering in his long life. When Hiroshi finished, the old monk was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You have been trying to go back through a door that is closed. This is why you suffer." Hiroshi nodded. "Yes, but how do I accept that the door is closed? How do I make peace with what I cannot change?" Kozin stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the mountain. "Tell me," he said, "what do you think your father would say to you if he could speak to you now?" Hiroshi felt tears building. "I think he would forgive me." We had many arguments over the years. We always forgave each other. This one just happened to be the last, but it was not different from the others. So, You believe he would forgive you? Kozen asked. Yes, Hiroshi said, but I will never know for certain. I will never hear him say it. The monk turned back to face him. Let me ask you something else. Do you forgive yourself? Hiroshi was startled by the question. How can I? I let him die with anger between us. Did you know he was going to die? Kozen asked. No, of course not. So, you had a normal argument with your father, not knowing it would be your last conversation. You did not willfully choose to leave things unresolved? You simply did not know that time was running out. The monk sat back down. You are punishing yourself for not having knowledge you could not have had, for not fixing something before you knew it needed to be fixed. This is unreasonable. This is cruelty toward yourself. But I should have, Hiroshi protested. I should have apologized sooner. Should have is a weapon we use against ourselves. Kozen said gently. It assumes we had perfect knowledge and perfect wisdom at every moment. But we do not. We make mistakes. We leave things unsaid. We assume there will be more time. This is part of being human. He poured more tea for both of them. Here is what I want you to understand. The conversation you wish you could have with your father, the reconciliation you long for, cannot happen in the past. That door is closed, but it can happen in your heart, right now, in this present moment. Hiroshi looked confused. What do you mean? Your father is not here in body, Kozen said, but he lives in your heart and memory. You can have the conversation there, not as a fantasy that changes what happened, but as a genuine act of reconciliation within yourself. You can apologize to his memory. You can offer him the words you wish you had spoken. You can forgive yourself for being human and imperfect. And you can choose to believe what you already believe, that he would forgive you. But is that real? Hiroshi asked. Or is it just pretending? It is as real as your suffering has been, Kozen said. You have been having a conversation with your father in your heart for 15 years. A conversation of regret and pain. What I am suggesting is that you change that conversation, that you make it one of reconciliation and peace instead of endless torment. He looked at Hiroshi with deep compassion. Your father cannot release you from this suffering. He is gone. Only you can release yourself. The forgiveness you long for from him must ultimately come from yourself to yourself. Over the following days, Hiroshi sat with this teaching. At first, it felt wrong, like cheating somehow. Real reconciliation would be with his father, facing each other, speaking aloud. But his father was not available for that. The only reconciliation possible was the one he could create within himself. So Hiroshi began a practice. Each day he would sit quietly and imagine his father present with him. He would speak aloud the words he wished he had said, the apology, the love, the gratitude for everything his father had given him. And then he would let himself hear, in his heart, what he believed his father would say in return. Words of forgiveness, words of love, the assurance that one argument did not define their entire relationship. At first, this felt artificial, like he was making it up. But as he continued the practice, something shifted. He began to feel genuine release, not because his father's ghost was actually speaking to him, but because he was finally allowing the reconciliation to happen within himself. He was finally forgiving himself for being imperfect. He was finally accepting that he had loved his father deeply, and his father had known that, even though their last conversation had been difficult. The past did not change. His father still died after an argument, but Hiroshi's relationship to that unchangeable past transformed. He stopped endlessly wishing he could go back through the closed door. He stopped tormenting himself with should have. He accepted that he was human, that he had made a mistake, and that his father would have understood and forgiven. Several months later, Hiroshi returned to visit Kozen. The old monk could see immediately that something had changed in him. The weight he had been carrying was lighter. "Thank you," Hiroshi said simply. "You helped me see that I could not change the past, but I could change my relationship to it. I could not have the conversation I wanted to have with my father then, but I could have a different kind of conversation with him now in my heart. It is not perfect, but it is something. It has given me peace." Kozen smiled. "You have learned an important teaching. The past cannot be changed, but our relationship to the past can be transformed. We cannot go back, but we can find healing here and now. The door to the past is closed, but the door to peace in the present is always open." Hiroshi nodded. "I used to think letting go of the past meant forgetting or pretending it did not matter. But that is not what it means. It means accepting what happened, making whatever peace we can with it, and then turning our attention fully to this moment. Living here, not there." He looked at the old monk with gratitude. "For 15 years, I have been trying to live in a moment that no longer exists, trying to fix something that cannot be fixed. It was like trying to rebuild a house that has already burned down. The only way forward was to accept the loss and build something new here, where I actually am." Years later, when Hiroshi was himself an older man, people would come to him carrying their own burdens of unresolved past relationships. He would tell them his story and share what Kozen had taught him. "The past cannot be changed," he would say, "but you are not powerless. You can change how you relate to the past. You can have the conversations you need to have, even if the other person is gone. You can forgive yourself for being human. You can choose to believe the best about how the other person would respond if they could." He would remind them that holding on to past regrets does not honor the people we have lost. It only keeps us from fully living the life that remains. Our loved ones who have died would not want us trapped in endless suffering over unresolved moments. They would want us to find peace, to live fully, to honor their memory by continuing to grow and love and be present with life. Take a deep, settling breath here. Notice if you are carrying unresolved moments from your past, conversations you wish you could have, apologies you wish you could make, reconciliations that are no longer possible in the way you want them to be. You cannot go back through the closed door, but you can find reconciliation here, in your own heart, in this present moment. The Buddha taught that peace is always available right now, not by changing what happened, but by changing our relationship to what happened. Not by fixing the past, but by accepting it and choosing how we will carry it forward. As we move toward the close of this journey through the Buddha's teachings on letting go of the past, let us reflect on what we have explored together. We began with the story of the monk who left his bundle on the other side of the river and discovered the freedom of traveling unburdened. This taught us that we often carry things in our minds long after we have physically moved past them, that we rob ourselves of present peace by mentally going back to retrieve what we have set down. We met Yuki, the dancer who could not accept that she had changed, who was trapped in an identity that no longer fit. Through her story, we learned that we are not fixed beings. We are like rivers, always flowing, always changing. Clinging to who we used to be prevents us from discovering who we are becoming. We walked with Kenji, who spent 30 years tormented by a choice he had made, unable to see the value in the life he actually lived, because he was obsessed with the life he did not live. His story showed us that regret about roads not taken steals the beauty of the road we are actually walking. We sat with Sumiko in the cherry orchards, watching her slowly learn to see the blossoms that were actually blooming, rather than only the memory of blossoms she had seen with her lost husband. Through her journey, we understood that attachment to how things used to be prevents us from appreciating how things are. We stood beside Jiro at the shore, feeling his decades of resentment toward his brother and watching as he finally learned to release it. His story taught us that holding on to past grievances imprisons us more than anyone we resent. We observed Natsumi building walls to protect herself from a betrayal that happened decades ago, and saw her discover that her protection had become a prison. She showed us that we can learn from the past without letting it control our present. And finally, we sat with Hiroshi in the old monk's hermitage, learning that some doors to the past are forever closed, but that reconciliation and peace can still be found in the present moment. All of these stories point to the same essential teaching. The past has already happened. It exists now only as memory, as mental formations that arise in our consciousness. We cannot change what happened, but we have complete freedom to choose how we relate to what happened. We can endlessly replay and regret, or we can acknowledge and release. We can be imprisoned by memory, or we can be informed by it without being controlled. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from clinging to what is impermanent. The past is perhaps the most perfect example of impermanence. It has already passed. It is already gone. Only memory remains. When we cling to the past, trying to keep it alive, trying to change it, trying to live in it, we suffer. But when we can gently acknowledge that the past has passed and turn our attention to the only moment we actually have, which is this one right now, we discover a profound freedom. This does not mean the past does not matter. Our memories shape us. Our experiences teach us. Our history is part of who we are. The Buddha never taught that we should forget the past or pretend it did not happen. He taught that we should learn from it without being imprisoned by it, that we should honor it without being controlled by it, that we should let it inform our present without letting it steal our presence. There is a beautiful teaching about this in the image of a raft. The Buddha said that his teachings are like a raft used to cross a river. Once you have crossed to the other shore, you do not carry the raft on your back for the rest of your journey. You acknowledge its usefulness. You appreciate that it brought you across, and then you leave it behind because you no longer need it. The past is like this raft. It brought you to where you are now. It served a purpose. It taught you things. But now you are here, on this shore, in this present moment. You do not need to keep carrying what brought you here. You can acknowledge it with gratitude and then set it down so you can move forward unburdened. Letting go of the past is not a single act, but a continuous practice. Like the monk Ocean ringing the bell each morning, we return to this practice again and again. The past will arise in memory. Old regrets will surface. Familiar resentments will appear. This is natural. This is what minds do. Our practice is not to prevent these memories from arising. Our practice is to notice when they arise and gently choose not to follow them into the past, to acknowledge them and return to the present, again and again and again. Some days this will be easy. The past will feel truly past, and we will rest comfortably in the present. Other days will be harder. The memories will be vivid and compelling. We will find ourselves mentally time traveling, living in moments that no longer exist. When this happens, we do not criticize ourselves. We simply notice, I am in the past right now, and gently return our attention to what is actually here. This returning is the practice. Not achieving permanent freedom from memory, but cultivating the capacity to recognize when we have drifted into the past and bring ourselves back to the present. Each time we do this, we strengthen that capacity. Each time we choose the present over the past, we wear a smoother path. Eventually, the present moment becomes more familiar than the past we used to constantly revisit. The Buddha also taught about the importance of forgiveness in letting go of the past, not because others deserve our forgiveness, but because we deserve freedom from the burden of resentment. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because holding on to what happened keeps us trapped in it. When we forgive, we are not saying the past was okay. We are saying that we are no longer willing to let the past steal our present. We are choosing our peace over our grievance. We are releasing the hot coal we have been holding, not for the benefit of the person we might have thrown it at. but for our own benefit, so we can stop burning ourselves. This forgiveness extends to ourselves as well. So much of what keeps us trapped in the past is our inability to forgive ourselves for mistakes we made, for who we were, for what we did or failed to do. We replay these old errors, these old versions of ourselves, with harsh judgment and endless criticism. But the person who made those mistakes is not exactly who we are now. We have learned, we have grown, we have changed. Refusing to forgive ourselves is refusing to accept that we are capable of growth and transformation. The Buddha taught that everyone has the capacity to change, to learn, to become wiser and more compassionate. But we cannot grow if we are forever anchored to our past selves. We cannot become someone new if we are constantly identifying as the person who made those mistakes years ago. We need to be willing to forgive ourselves, not by pretending we did nothing wrong, but by accepting that we are human, that we were doing the best we could with the understanding we had at the time, and that we deserve the opportunity to be different now. As you rest here tonight, bringing this journey toward its close, I invite you to consider what you might be ready to release. Not forever, not perfectly, but just for now, just for this moment. What past event, what old regret, what lingering resentment might you gently set down even temporarily? You do not need to forget anything. You do not need to pretend anything did not matter. You simply need to experiment with what it feels like to be here, fully, without part of your attention constantly traveling backward in time. What does it feel like to give this present moment your complete presence? Notice how your body feels when you're truly here, the weight of your body on the surface beneath you, the rhythm of your breath, the sounds around you. These simple sensations are only available now, in this moment. They cannot be experienced in the past or the future. They are the doorway to presence. When you find yourself drifting into the past, as you inevitably will because that is what minds do, you can use these physical sensations as an anchor. Feel your breath, feel your body. These sensations call you back to now, to the only moment where life is actually happening. The past happened there and then. Life is happening here and now. You cannot fully live here if you are constantly there. The choice is simple but profound. Where do you want to put your attention? In the unchangeable past or in the living present? The Buddha's final words to his students were, "All things are impermanent. Work out your own liberation with diligence." He was teaching them and us that everything passes, everything changes, nothing remains the same. The past has passed. It cannot be held. Trying to hold it creates suffering. But in each new moment, we have the opportunity for liberation, for freedom, for presence, not someday when we have finally resolved everything from the past, but right now, in this breath, in this moment. Liberation is always available. We simply need to stop trying to live in a time that no longer exists and allow ourselves to be fully alive in the time that does exist. As you prepare to sleep, know that tomorrow will bring a new day, a genuinely fresh beginning. The past will still have happened, but it does not need to determine what happens next. You are not forever bound by what was. You are free to be present for what is and what will be. The cherry blossoms that bloomed last spring are gone. But if you are still mourning them, you will miss the blossoms blooming this spring. The boat on the other side of the river is no longer yours to carry. The person you were years ago has changed into who you are now. The choices you made in the past led you here, and here is where your life is actually happening. Let yourself rest in this present moment. Let the past be past. Not forgotten, not dismissed, but simply past. Let yourself be here, now, available for whatever this moment offers. This is the freedom the Buddha taught. This is the peace that comes from letting go. This is the gift of being fully alive to the life that is actually yours to live, which is only ever happening now. Your breath is happening now. Your heartbeat is now. The soft surface beneath you exists now. The darkness or light around you is now. Everything that is actually real, everything that is actually here, exists only in this present moment. The past is memory. The future is imagination. But this right here, this is real. This is where life is. And in this moment, you are okay. Whatever happened before, whatever might happen later, right now, in this breath, you are okay. You are here. You are breathing. You are aware. This is enough. You are enough. This moment is enough. Let yourself settle completely into this sufficiency, into this enoughness of the present moment. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing else you need to figure out tonight. The past can wait. The future can wait. Right now, just be here. Just breathe. Just rest. The Buddha taught that peace is our natural state when we stop struggling, when we stop trying to change what has already happened, when we stop trying to live in time that does not exist. When we simply allow ourselves to be present with what is, peace arises naturally. So let yourself be at peace. Let the past rest where it belongs in the past. Let yourself rest where you belong in the present. Let your body soften completely. Let your mind release its grip on yesterday. Let yourself fall gently into sleep, into rest, into the natural peace that is always here when we stop carrying what we do not need to carry. You have been on a long journey tonight, through stories and teachings, through the Buddha's wisdom about letting go. But the journey has brought you here, to this moment, to this breath. And here is exactly where you need to be. Not in the past, not in any story or memory, but here in the quiet simplicity of now. As you drift toward sleep, know that you can return to these teachings whenever you need them. Whenever you find yourself trapped in the past, you can remember the monk leaving his bundle on the riverbank. You can remember Yuki learning to flow like a river into her new life. You can remember Kenji finally seeing the value in the life he actually lived. You can remember Sumiko discovering how to see this spring's blossoms. You can remember Jiro releasing his resentment like a wave returning to the sea. You can remember Natsumi lowering her walls to let friendship in. You can remember Hiroshi finding reconciliation in his own heart. And you can remember that in any moment, you have the power to set down the past and be present for now. This power is always yours. This choice is always available. The present moment is always here, patiently waiting for your full attention. So rest now, knowing that tomorrow is a fresh start, that the past has passed, and you are free to meet the new day without carrying yesterday on your shoulders. That letting go is not something you do once, but something you practice gently, again and again, with patience and compassion for yourself. Sleep well in this knowledge. Sleep peacefully in this present moment. Let everything else fall away. Let the past be past. Let yourself be here now exactly as you are. This is enough. You are enough. This moment is complete. And when you wake tomorrow, you will have another opportunity to practice presence, to notice when you drift into the past and gently return, to choose the living moment over the dead past, to be fully alive to the life that is actually yours, which only ever exists in the now. But for tonight, simply rest. Simply breathe. Simply let yourself be held by this moment, which asks nothing of you, except that you be here. Everything else can wait. Everything else is already okay. Right now, in this breath, all is well. The Buddha's blessing to you is simply this. May you know peace. May you release what you do not need to carry. May you discover the freedom that comes from letting go. May you live fully in the only moment that is ever truly yours, which is always, always now. Rest well, dear traveler. Your journey through the past is complete. Your arrival in the present is accomplished. Sleep now in the gentle understanding that letting go is not loss, but liberation. That the past can be honored without being lived in. That you are free in each moment to begin again. Thank you for walking this path with us tonight. Thank you for your willingness to explore these teachings with an open heart. Thank you for your presence here at Calm Buddha Path. May your sleep be deep and peaceful. May your dreams be gentle. May you wake tomorrow feeling lighter, having set down what you no longer need to carry. May you discover the joy of being fully present for the life that is actually here, waiting for you in each new moment. Good night. Let go. Rest well.